5G. It promises to transform our lives in all kinds of different ways. But what is it exactly? It's often described as just the next step in the pursuit of an ever faster network. But in reality, 5G is much, much more. It's an entirely new technological foundation, purpose-built to support the next great wave of life-changing digital advancements that will be enabled by our smart and connected future. From the safety and environmental benefits of autonomous driving, to dramatic breakthroughs in artificial intelligence via machine learning, and a whole new era in healthcare, to a smart and connected revolution that will transform agriculture, manufacturing, cities, and our individual homes, even virtual and augmented reality. Every one of these promising new breakthroughs will be built on the common foundation of 5G, enabling billions of things to be made smart through seamless connectivity, massive computing power, and access to rich data and analytics stored at the eye of the cloud, all of which means one company is uniquely positioned to power 5G end to end. Intel.
Electromagnetic radiation. You've all heard about it. Well, there's some new research that shows this microwave radiation, which includes cell phones, cell phone towers, portable phones, and your Wi-Fi router, that when you're exposed to this at high levels on a chronic basis, it is a mitochondrial poison. And how does it do that? Well, it resonates with your cell frequencies, and it generates a essentially free radicals. And what's the mechanism? Through a reactive nitrogen species called peroxynitrate. And this causes more hydroxyl free radicals than elevated iron levels. So, and there's hundreds and hundreds of papers showing this.
So hi, my name's Kevin Modis. I'm with the California Brain Tumor Association, but actually collaborate with 10 other groups. One of the groups is emfscientist.org, emfscientist.org. That's 220 doctors and scientists from 39 countries who have looked at health effects from wireless radiation. And from their work and the work of others, we can clearly say that wireless radiation can cause cancer, neurological problems, immune system disorders, and reproductive harm. Clearly, our scientists, along with the other groups I work with, which are composed of people who are developing wireless health effects from their various sources. For instance, people developing brain tumors from their cell phone and the radiation emits. People developing neurological symptoms from the Wi-Fi, from school Wi-Fi. People developing neurological and cancerous health effects from simple smart meters. Smart meters being little wireless meters that are put on people's homes so that people don't have to come by and read the meter themselves manually. So regardless of the source, and cell towers are the most powerful source of wireless radiation emissions, regardless of the source, the health effects can be the same. So what brings me here today is the rollout of 5G technology. And people need to understand that 5G technology is very different from 2G, 3G, and 4G that preceded it. And that is because the wireless radiation is using a higher frequency. Our current wireless technology uses about 1 gigahertz to 4 gigahertz. This new 5G technology is ultra high frequency, ultra high intensity, and it's 24 gigahertz to 90 gigahertz. To put this in some type of perspective, 90 gigahertz is 90 billion electromagnetic waves per second hitting your body. We know people are already getting sick from the lower frequencies, and we expect, that is our scientists expect, that these higher ultra high frequency microwaves are going to bring people to disease quicker and in a more intense form. The other problem with 5G technology is these microwaves are very short. So our old microwaves were about 2.5 to 3 feet long. These are now about 1 inch to half an inch long, and they don't travel very well. So they're going to have to put a little cell tower transmitter in front of about every 2 to 10 homes. Now this is a big problem because we know that cancer rates around regular cell towers are about 3 or 4 times what they normally should be. We also know that there's neurological symptoms that increase as you get closer and closer to a cell tower. Now these new transmitters are going to be placed close to people's homes. It's going to be continuous exposure as with other cell towers, but it'll be emitting a much more higher frequency, high intensity wireless radiation. So we have a tremendous problem that's happening, and people need to understand that the FCC is pushing this technology nationwide. What's also important for people to understand is the FCC is dominated by the wireless industry itself. And the FCC are the people that are given the responsibility and privilege of regulating wireless radiation human exposure standards.
It seems that it's hatred on repeat, and on repeat. But here's the thing, while all this is going on, beneath all of that is this 5G network which is rolling out, and 5G is really the elephant in the living room that no one is paying attention to. Well, some people are paying attention to it, but I don't think enough people are giving it the attention it deserves. And when you look at 5G, folks, I mean, it's being rolled out this year. You can look it up on any websites and you can see it's being rolled out this year, upgrading to 5th generation communications. And what it's all about, folks, is a completely new type of communication. Self-driving cars, all sorts of stuff can come from the 5G network. So it's being promoted as something that's very, very good. And as you can see, they're trialing it this year. 5G is coming this year, but the first official launches will come in 2018. And it's coming from all directions, folks. Many people are promoting it, and it's being promoted as a very good thing. You know, what is it and when do I get it? You know, the language of a billion things is what it's about. It's about the Internet of Things. That's what 5G is. And if you look at the roadmap, you can see the roadmap here, 2015 to 2022. That's not very far away, folks. They're talking about rolling this out very, very quickly, very soon. And it's all being promoted as something very good for business. But when you really look into it and look at what they're saying, again, it's about the Internet of Things. And what exactly is the Internet of Things? It's about everything talking to everything else. You know, broadband experience everywhere, anytime, smart vehicles, smart transport, smart infrastructure. You know, together we can make it a reality. You know, it's all being promoted as something very, very good. And what will happen in the next 5 years, oh look, you'll be able to download full-length, high-definition movies in seconds. I thought it was illegal to download a movie. But anyway, this is how things are being promoted. This is how it's being promoted to the public. And what it's really all about, folks, is this. This is the important thing. Frequencies that have been used by the military, this is extremely important. You know, it uses a millimeter wave, which can be extremely dangerous to all living things and not just people. You can look at the US non-lethal weapons program, and they talk about active denial systems. This is what 5G is all about. And this active denial grid is being put in all of our countries, all of our towns. This is what they're rolling out, folks. You can look at it here in 2015. US wants spectrum for 5G lethal cyber weapons, right? So it's about mass surveillance and about weaponizing the airwaves. Really, that's what it's heading to. And the studies on it are amazing. There's all sorts of studies, but they're not interested in the studies. That's the thing. This is being rolled out without any studies. They're doing it basically because there's a lot of money involved in rolling it out. That's what people really don't realize here, what's going on. The Internet of Things and the smart grid is blanket control of everything, monitoring of everybody, and underneath that is also the very real possibility of the weaponization of the airwaves, because 5G technology is what they use for microwave cannons and active denial systems.
Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. You know, it means the world to me, and it's really my delight to have back on the line Maxwell Igan. You know him very well from all of his truth-telling over at thecrowhouse.com. His YouTube channel by the same name is The Crow House, and his radio show on American Voice Radio, Surviving the Matrix. It's my delight to welcome back Maxwell Igan. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Sean. It's very good to be back talking to you, brother. Been a long time. Love your show. Thanks for the work that you do in keeping it real for people.
There is a rollout here. I've referred to it as the Beast system. Others might call it just the New World Order lockdown grid. But we have to talk about 5G. And Max, I know you're very fired up about 5G and getting the word out about the dangers. Would it be okay with you if I played a clip, a 2-minute clip from Tom Wheeler, the FCC chair and former CEO of the Cellular Telecommunications and Internet Association?
Tom Wheeler delivered a campaign contribution of $700,000 to President Obama, and then he was nominated chairman of the FCC about a month later.
Because I think it's a very important setup to our conversation.
Absolutely.
Okay, listen up. Here it comes.
Turning innovators loose is far preferable to expecting committees and regulators to define the future. We won't wait for the standards. We're already seeing the industry gearing up to seize this opportunity. Verizon and AT&T tell us they'll begin deploying 5G trials in 2017, and the first commercial deployments they're talking about are expected in 2020. And we're not done. As part of our July 14 action, we also plan to ask for comments on opening up other high-frequency bands. Many of the high-frequency bands that we will make available for 5G currently have some satellite users, as well as some Defense Department applications, or at least the possibility of future satellite and defense users. This means sharing will be required between satellite and terrestrial wireless, an issue that is especially relevant in the 28 gigahertz band. But if anyone tells you that they know the details of what 5G is going to become, run the other way. If something can be connected, it will be connected. Hundreds of billions of microchips connected in products from pill bottles to plant waterers. We must reject the notion that the 5G future will be the sole provenance of urban areas. The 5G revolution will touch all corners of our country. A lot more antenna siting decisions by local governments, and tightened our shot clock for siting application reviews. America's local governments will play an important role in determining how we fulfill this national priority. You can be sure of only one thing. The biggest Internet of Things application has yet to be imagined. Tens of billions of dollars in economic activity. And that's damn important.
All right, I'll pause it there. It seems to be all that matters to these people, Max, is tens of billions of dollars in potential profits. He said in that piece, if something can be connected, it will be connected. Hundreds of billions of microchips. Guys, you're starting to see the big picture?
Yeah, see, that's what people really don't realize here, what's going on. The Internet of Things and the smart grid is blanket control of everything, monitoring of everybody, and underneath that is also the very real possibility of the weaponization of the airwaves, because 5G technology is what they use for microwave cannons and active denial systems. 5G can see through walls, it can see through your clothing, it can see what you're carrying down the street, it can target you. It can target you with a millimeter wave if it wants, which is like a microwave wave. And when you look at some of the patents that they've got, like patents for mind control and all sorts of things like that, and this isn't joking around. You can go and look up U.S. patents. They've got patents for remote neural monitoring, patents for brainwave manipulation, patents for subvocal recognition. Like the voice of God. Where you hear these voices in your head. So they've got all of this technology there, and this is all capable with the 5G system. And when the smart grid comes online, it's going to get to a point where you're paying every time you open your fridge, you're paying every time you turn on the stove, every time you do anything, you'll be paid per use for everything. You'll be paid every time you flush the toilet in your own house eventually. You have to pay for it. I mean, this is the way they're going, and they're moving it all into this digital system. If you notice now, you can Google FedCoin. The federal government has been looking very, very closely at Bitcoin and looking at blockchain technology. They want to move over to that. They want to create their own blockchain technology. Then all they have to do is outlaw anything that isn't government run, and everyone has to switch over to that. They could do something like create some sort of a leniency, give it as a gift. Okay, the system's crashed or whatever, we need a reset, so we're going to cancel all debt or whatever. Everyone will love it, think it's a great gift from the government, but we all have to move over to this new system, which is going to be digital. And once it's digital currency and it's all blockchain and all that sort of stuff, then they've got you. And that's what they're rolling out. But underneath it, you've got to really look at what this system is. And you call it the beast system. And that's probably a lot more true than you understand. Because really when you look at all of this stuff, if you want to get into biblical references and all of this sort of thing, you look at the metaphorical biting of the apple, the search for knowledge. What does that do? What does the search for knowledge do? And, we want to know everything. We want to know how the rocks are made. We want to know how the trees are grown, how old they are, all this sort of stuff. So we cut them down and measure the rings of the tree. Suddenly we don't have the tree anymore. What's the purpose of that? Why can't we just enjoy the tree? Why do we need all this knowledge that we've wanted and we've searched for? What's it for? How does it relate to the human experience? Is that why we were put in this metaphorical garden? Weren't we put there just to experience what it's like to be alive? Why do we need to know all this stuff, and what does it lead to? What it leads to is something like the creation of the internet. And when you look at some of the ancient past, you look at some of the old sigils and stuff that have been lying around, the old sigils that you see for summoning demons and summoning Lucifer and all of this sort of stuff, they look suspiciously like computer parts. A lot of people have brought this up lately. They look like diagrams, computer diagrams. They look like capacitors, resistors. And what happens when we create these capacitors and resistors and we put them together? This magic happens. This force comes into being. This electricity. What is it? What is electricity? What is this stuff that we're creating? And they say all these sigils, these will summon Lucifer. And they used to use scrying mirrors, which were these black mirrors they used to look into, which would show them the future and the past. And here we are with our iPads and our computer screens with these black screens showing us the future and the past. And our computers are full of all these little sigils set to summon Lucifer. And what is this beast system? We're all like neural nodes of the system, and it's mapping the entire human terrain. And underneath this is this emergent intelligence of the internet itself, which is growing. There's certain bot activity that's happening on the internet, which is self-learning bots. You saw recently there was the creation of the Google AI, which went crazy, developed its own language. They had to shut it down. The same with the Facebook AI, started talking to itself in its own language, a language we can't understand. This is very dangerous. You've got an artificial intelligence communicating with itself in a language we can't understand, encrypting its own language. And this language, I believe it's some sort of it's a picture language. It's not like stringing sentences together, words together into sentences and stuff. It's more like pictures and visual stuff. That's the language. It's sort of right brain stuff, which we've been led away from. So what you've got to understand is that behind what's going on, every time someone writes a little program, a little code, a little app to do something, this is a little singularity of consciousness that may have a very, very small mind, can only perform one task, but it's a little singularity. And behind that, the internet sees that and it learns from it. And everybody creates these things and it learns from all of us. So what we have behind everything is this emergent life of the internet itself. And we look at AI and we think of artificial intelligence. But really what it is autonomic intelligence. The internet is leading itself. All the logic programs are leading towards automation because, like I said, if you're on a quest for knowledge and you introduce a usurious monetary system over that, an interest-based monetary system, then you put everybody in scarcity. You create a need for efficiency, a need to automate the system, and you eventually lead to something like the creation of the internet. And what is the internet? It's the code that bears the light. What does the word Lucifer mean? Lucas means light. Cipher means code. The internet is the code that bears the light, the bearer of light. It's the greatest giver of information we've ever had. What is light? Light is information. The internet itself appears to be the Lucifer system, and we're all acting as neural nodes for that system. This whole 5G grid is being rolled out, and when you couple this with the chemtrails and the spraying of nanotechnology, all the nanotech we've been finding in the food and all this stuff that's going on, what's happening is we are being led into a position where we are about to be hooked up online through this 5G grid and to become basically like a hive mind. And that's the way they're leading us, and that's what the 5G grid is capable of doing. I mean, it's really deep if you look at this and get right into it, and there's so much to it.
And so today we're going to talk about 5G and how it connects to also geoengineering, if that's something you could go into a little bit.
Oh, yes, this is a huge topic. And I wanted you to know, Claudia, that I am writing another book, the third in the series,
Wow.
The Under an Ionized Sky, from Chemtrails to Space Fence Lockdown. In that book, the second book, I take up the space fence, which is very important. This is the huge feature that has been built around us. It is the culmination of the old Star Wars defense system, the Strategic Defense Initiative. And it is within this dome, this Tesla dome, that we will be living. And it's very important to understand that by saying ionized sky, I'm talking about how the entire sky has been electrified. It is 24/7, like an antenna, like a battery. It's like in a way, a mini ionosphere. And this was the whole purpose of HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project, was to zap the ionosphere, trigger more electrons ionized to come down, get a conduit going between the ionosphere and our troposphere, so that many military operations, wireless operations, could go forward. And that's what we're breathing now. And that's very important to know. We are breathing an electrified air. And we really feel it, I think, in summertime, when people have actually said to me, I feel like I'm in a microwave oven. And we're led to believe this is about climate change and carbons, ozone layer thinning. And while all of those can be justified minimally, what is the elephant in the living room that is not being discussed is the military-industrial intelligence complex and their agendas. And they have several. And I point those out in the Chemtrails HAARP book from the work of independent scientist Clifford Carnicom so long ago. Clifford he's a very good friend of mine. He was involved in the first research into what was falling from the sky from the jet trails being left over northern New Mexico. And he is the one who really discovered Morgellons, the genetically engineered entity that he has renamed the cross-domain bacteria. Believe it or not, your request for 5G plays a role in synthetic biology. And it's very crucial now that we understand what that role is. And I'm sure by the end of writing the book on the synthetic biology, I'll know a lot more about these, what are being called electro-optical relationships in technologies.
Right.
And the person who's bringing this forward the most right now is the young German chemist, Harald Kautz-Vella. And he is being, I think, unfairly maligned and discounted because he has some pretty far-out theories. But we are living in a space age now. It's very clear to me, and hopefully I will point out in this hour how that will play on us, because we are subject to the space fence and the space era that the space fence is all about. And part of that is what Harold goes into, of looking again at our biology, the biology of the planet, the biology of the human being and all living creatures, and trying to see how they are electrically connected. And this is what is being right now manipulated, is our electrical, our magnetic relationship with our Earth and with our own bodies.
Right.
So let's look at 5G just for a moment. I'm looking out my window here where I live, and I see a small transformer on a telephone pole. I know that it's not a 5G antenna, but 5G antennas, at least in the States, are going to, for the most part, look like small black boxes, is the word on the street at this point. Now, whether that's true or not, we will have to see over time. We're also told that the 5G rollout is slowly happening, but the truth is that the 5G rollout is going at an amazing pace right now. My guess is that it's been up and running for at least 10 years, in the sense of 5G, at least 10 years, because this is not simply the next increment beyond 4G and 3G. This is a creature of a whole other signature, electrical signature. This is millimeter waves, and that's the important part. Millimeter waves are very, very, very tiny. We have not had millimeter wave technology other than when you are going through at an airport, the TSA is a millimeter wave technology. And as we now know, it is really very damaging to the mitochondria of the DNA. And so having the 5G in neighborhoods, as the Tom Wheeler, head of the FCC, put so succinctly, basically in a very stentorian military way, told us that we were going ahead with 5G, that nothing was going to stop it, that the profits were going to roll, and we were going to have speed beyond belief, and everybody wants speed in their internet connectivity, blah, blah, blah. He made it clear that the 5G is to serve the Internet of Things, the IoT. And it's important to understand the IoT because most people's homes have it. They have cars that have multiple computers, cars that have multiple sensors in them. Even the freezer or the refrigerator in the kitchen has the sensors and microprocessors. Microprocessors are tiny, tiny computers. We're talking nanoscale now. We're talking nanotechnology, which very few people understand is extremely dangerous in itself. It was released, to the best of my knowledge, I have a whole chapter on nanotechnology in the upcoming book, released big time in 2002 into the public. Whether that is true or not, I don't know, but it's the best that I could come up with. Right. And there was no congressional decision, there was no debate, there was no conference at which the pros and cons were discussed. It simply was done. And what that means is the nanotechnology, we have it in women's cosmetics, we have it in clothing, we have it in foods, we have it in every way possible, already released into the environment. I don't have national security clearance, so I can't exactly say what they are, but I know that trillions of sensors have been released on the seas, above the U.S. Navy operations, almost anywhere where there is a conglomerate of chemical trails that are turning into a plasma cloud cover, you can expect that there are going to be nanosensors in that cloud, and you're going to see nanoprocessors, microprocessors, which mean two-way communication. They're transceivers, they transmit, they receive, because all that sensor data is being collected and collated and interpreted by supercomputers at the very least, and by quantum computers like D-Wave at the very most. So what is the purpose of all this? Well, it sounds silly to the common person who simply wants to have a good life and have their children have a good life and avoid disease and make a living so that they don't have to worry about money. But to the military mind, what this is about is full spectrum dominance. And I use the title in the first book, in the title, because this is a doctrine, and it is the doctrine that runs the military now, and this has been since the 1990s when we had a full-scale revolution in military affairs. It's known as the RMA. And during that time, we moved from conventional warfare to tactical warfare. We moved from symmetric warfare to asymmetric warfare. We moved from big armies, like in World War II in the fields of France, to tactical special forces teams, most of whom are at least wearing helmets that are triggering their brains and that they are actually in a voice-to-skull technology, or they have been genetically altered themselves. I know that sounds far-fetched, but I think that cloning and genetic alteration of human beings has been going on now for at least 20 to 30 years. So basically the military wants to dominate this whole realm. It wants to dominate the near-Earth orbit. And when I say the military, yes, I'm talking the United States, but I'm also talking NATO countries. I'm also talking agreements and alignments with China, Russia. We are entering a space age, so globalization, which we heard about forever, used to be called internationalism. Globalization really means the space age. And think about it. If you're in charge of setting up a space age, one of the first things Trump did when he came into office was to resurrect the National Space Council, which had been put to bed a few decades ago, along with the Star Wars defense program.
Wow.
Now he's resurrected it because now we're in the space age. And they're announcing it. They're going public with it. It happened in January. It began in January. They began normalizing the geoengineering we've been subjected to now for 2 decades. So full spectrum dominance goes right into the neighborhood, goes right into the human body, goes right into the DNA. So let's look at 5G along those lines. Already we know that the millimeter waves are deadly.
Right.
I mean deadly for the mitochondria, the protective layer of the DNA. Really, really important point is that it isn't just the 5G penetrating my DNA, mitochondria. It's that what's falling from the chemical trails is not just loaded with, I've already mentioned the microprocessors, I've mentioned the sensors. We all know that there are heavy metals coming, and they're nanoscale, again, nanotech,
Right.
and those would be aluminum, barium, strontium, lithium, titanium, any EMs that are conductive. So we have 3 things. Now let's go to the biologicals, the so-called the genetic aberrations, I'll call them, like the Morgellons, like the cross-domain bacteria. Coming into our body, we breathe them. They go into our lungs. They then go out into our bloodstream. They then find their way to the blood-brain barrier, and they're through because they're nanoscale. They're submicron level size. So now we have what are known now as many names, nanobots. Nanobots. They're little robots. We have MEMS in us, GEMS. These are just acronyms for, I think it's mechanical, electrical sensors. They're extremely tiny. They're all through space. They're in the upper atmosphere. They're in our oceans. They're in every creature that lives in the oceans. They're in us. It's the nanoscale that's done this. And they have access to all of our soft tissue organs. Babies are being born, and in the placenta are the nanobots. So now they have nanobots in us, just from the chemical trails. I haven't even gone into the vaccines and the GMO foods, which are all in league with this operation.
Right.
The operation's purpose is that they want full spectrum dominance over us too. There is no limit to full spectrum dominance.
How do they protect themselves from all of that? Can they?
Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely. Just as it was with AIDS, the people who created this AIDS epidemic had the antidote. They always have the antidote. The Nazis were the same way. You wouldn't release, it would be foolish to release something that you did not have the antidote for. And so the antidote here might be a vaccination. We ourselves who are out here suffering from Morgellons and lung problems, and and our health is deteriorating. We have all these autoimmune system conditions. We ourselves are having to look for our own antidotes. We don't have access to those vaccinations or those pills or even the HEPA filters that they must have on their houses. They must have extraordinary filters. The HEPA filter was what Clifford Carnicom used when he was collecting the fibers that turned out to be these cross-domain bacteria. So yes, they take care of their own. No worries about that. And I think it might even be the primary perk to becoming an insider, is that you get access to this. You will be taken care of in this global slow-boiling frog pandemic